Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We start off by praising Allah and sending peace and salutation upon the most beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So up until now, it's been me and Arbaz that usually have the conversations around employability skills. But today I've had the fortunate chance to bring in a brother called Adam from AMP. So that's Association of Muslim Police here in Leicester. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Adam to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does on a day-to-day.
Well, Assalamu alaikum, bro. Right then, so AMP, which is what we call ourselves, which we shortened it, but essentially what it stands for is the Association of Muslim Police, and what we're part of is Leicestershire Police, essentially, and we're a support staff network. So in terms of my full-time day job, I'm a police officer, and I currently work as a custody sergeant. So long story short, my job is basically work in the custody environment. Essentially, if you get arrested, putting it really simply, I'm the one who basically essentially authorises your detention if it's necessary and proportionate within the custody environment, and essentially looks after you and makes sure everything's done according to PACE, so Police and Criminal Evidence Act. But also in terms of the AMP side of stuff, I'm currently the chair, and as the chair of the staff network, one of the things that we look at is, along with the executive team, is to support our members. And when I say members, these could be police officers, police staff, PCSOs, police community support officers, and we support them within the organisation. So one of the things that we always look at is recruitment, retention, and progression. And those are the three things, an area that we try to focus predominantly in as well. But we also help and support the organisation understanding about the religious dynamics within the Muslim faith. So for instance, Ramadan, we're in Ramadan at the moment, and one of the things that AMP has been quite successful is making sure any Muslims who is partaking within the holy month of Ramadan, fasting, etc., then they can automatically apply for a FlexiPan, especially for our frontline officers and PCSOs who work shift patterns, for instance.
With you.
So that's normally when you apply for a FlexiPan, you need to have a justifiable reason for it, etc. You have to go, as you can imagine, you've got to go through a number of hoops. We've simplified that working internally, and now most Muslims can just apply, and it'll be automatically granted as subject to, naturally, resource and demand being able to be met.
That is brilliant. I feel like it's important because a lot of people will not work in a certain place because it doesn't allow them that flexibility, especially with their religion. Working for the police, I feel like for a lot of our younger listeners, that's almost...
It's a no-go.
It's a no-go. It's almost a taboo subject, not working for the police. But we had a conversation earlier this week a very brief conversation on the phone in regards to that. So a lot of our younger listeners have this perception that it's almost impossible to become a police officer. Now, obviously, I spoke to you earlier today, and you mentioned that you're actually from Leicester. Well, you came to Leicester in 2001.
Yeah.
And since then, you've basically come in through the ranks, haven't you? You've not been where you are right now from the get-go. You've had to build yourself up to get to where you got to. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you sort of get from where you are to where you are right now?
Yeah, so... you've nailed it on the head, essentially. So I came here in 2001 to Leicester, like most Somalis that live in Leicester. We all migrated pretty much, not all, but the most that you tend to find here living in Leicester, we all migrated in the early 2000s, late 90s into Leicester more specifically, if we're talking about Leicester here. So my family, etc., we moved from Sweden, for example, and migrated here and settled here. I grew up around the East Leicester area, so around Highfields, Evington, etc. And it's like you said, policing is not one of those professions that is highlighted or seen as a career goal or opportunity to go into. And it's for a multitude of reasons for it. And some of it is valid, and some of it is just misconceptions that people have. So for me, I've always had an interest in the criminal justice system and always had that fascination with it. And it was deciding, I was never an educational person. I knew I was good at working, etc., and I was good with my hands, etc. But just when it came to education side of it, I'm not that type of person at all. Me sitting down reading a book, it's a hard task. You're asking me to do impossible stuff there. So essentially, long story short, I was working with some charities, etc., and we did some projects with the police. And one of the things that we did was in relation to police relationship with ethnic minority communities, and that's how I got to working with the police, etc. And then I joined as a police officer, and I kind of enjoyed it, and I really did enjoy it. So I started off working in. So worked in neighbourhoods, worked in response. So neighbourhood policing, it's basically what you do is I pretty much worked around St. Peter, St. Matthews as a beat officer, and my job there was to deal with long-term issues. I'm bringing solutions to it and dealing with ASB matters, long-term issues, ASB, known individuals that are causing issues within the community, and dealing with them through the criminal justice system, or trying to get them diverted away from the criminal justice system. But that's subject to the individual, of course. And it's trying to deal with those individuals that are causing the most harm within that specific area, within that specific community, and you're given that protected time to do so. And then, whereas you look at your response policing, which is your 999 response, it's much more fast-paced, quick solutions, move on to the next job.
Definitely.
Essentially, and you cover a larger geographical area. So, for example, you'll have a team that covers the whole of East Leicester, whereas as a neighbourhood officer, all I had was just St. Peter's and St. Matthews to focus on, whereas response officers, they just cover the whole of East Leicester, and they just literally go from 999 calls to the next call, to the next call, to the next call.
I guess that's quite intense for you then, wasn't it, the 999 calls?
You thrive of it.
You thrive of it?
I thrived of it. It's where you start as a police officer. It's where you start from. Everybody starts from response policing. It's where you gain your initial skills, your initial knowledge, your quick risk assessments, developing those quick risk assessments, being able to make decisions on the spot. For instance, one of the things you'll always get criticised for, and it's easy to get criticised for, is, you will get sent to a job. Yeah, let's say person A and person B are having an argument on the street. Keep it really simple. You haven't got the hindsight of actually knowing
what's happened
beforehand. You don't.
Yeah.
So you have to base your decision on what separate both parties. What are both parties saying? Are there any witnesses? What can the witnesses tell me? What are the risks here? If I walk away, is there a risk of this situation escalating? And if there is, who's likely or most likely to cause the most harm here? Have I got any offences? If I've got offences, who've committed the offences? Can I take one party away, or will both parties walk away? And if none of the parties are going to walk away, do I have to proceed and arrest someone? And if I have to arrest someone, then you have to make that decision in a matter of minutes. We're talking about minutes here. Sometimes
definitely.
seconds, when you're having to put... I've put hands on straight away on people based on information that I've received from either CCTV operator or based on 999 call, because two people are literally having a scrap there and then. I've done it. I've arrested both parties there and then, separate them, let them cool down, put them in a car, and then take it down a notch, slow it down, and do the investigative side of stuff.
Definitely.
But even the investigative side of stuff takes a while to do as well. But again, you're making a decision. Can I let these people go? Would they go their separate ways? Can I drive one home? Is he willing to let me drive him home? If not, do I have to take him into custody? Again, it's easy for people to stand there and say, well, that was wrong.
It's easy for people to criticise, I feel, but the thing is, it's the nature of your job.
It is.
As harsh as it sounds, it's one of those jobs that's always looked down upon in a certain way, and especially with the rise of social media at this moment in time, people are always recording what you're doing. The camera's always out. That's the first thing that's out. The second a police officer arrives on scene, so I'm guessing you've been subject to that as well.
Oh yeah.
So it's like everyone will criticise what you're doing, but in reality, and now I think I've spoken to you about 10 police officers in total through our careers go. And honestly, I feel like arresting is probably your last option that you possibly want to take with someone.
It has to be the last resort,
and to be fair, I feel like that's a very common misconception that police officers are there. They're there to cause you more trouble, if that makes sense. That's the conception that a lot of people have, but it's actually not the case, because a lot of the police officers, especially in the St. Matthews beat sort of thing, we had a meeting with Shaka Adam, and they were there as well.
Yeah.
When I actually had a chat with them, they're like, "Oh no, we know a lot of the people around here, and they're actually quite friendly." And at first you're like, "Okay, that's just a stereotype." You say every police officer says that, but in reality, when we were actually in that room, and we had people from the local public who were walking around and saying, "Hi, Simon," or whatever his name was, I can't remember. And it's like, okay, they actually do know who you are, and they're actually very positive towards you.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this negative perception of the police, and obviously that comes part of the parcel with your job, and it's unfortunate, but I honestly feel like the police officers here, especially in Leicester, are here to support us rather than to make us feel criminal, if that makes sense. Like if something goes wrong, the first point of call is not judging the person, and that's one thing I've noticed about majority of police officers. They don't judge you straight off. They want to hear you. They want to listen to what you are. They're human beings, like we are, like having a conversation right now. You're a human being at the end of the day. You're not, you've got your badge, you've got your duty that you have to do. Of course you do, but at the same time, you're a human being, and you want the best for other people.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And it's like you've highlighted there, because I know who the people you're talking about, because I worked with them. I worked with them as a PC, and I've worked with them as a sergeant, because I was a sergeant for a bit as well. And yeah, it's people do know their local officers, which is a good thing. I can only speak for working out of Spinney Hill as a neighbourhood officer, and I know working out of Spinney Hill, for instance, out of Spinney Hill Nick, which covered St Peter's and St Matthews. We do know our local residents, and our local residents tend to know us as well. Just because our local residents know us and we know our local residents doesn't necessarily mean that they've come in contact with us for a negative reason.
Yeah,
because it can be for. I've helped victims of domestic violence. I've helped people who are just struggling with the breadline, where I've been able to connect them to local organisations, local charities, because I've got that opportunity to make those contacts and connections.
definitely.
And I'm able to say, well, actually, even like if it's just a simple safeguarding job, for instance, I'm going to your house because there's a report of a concern about the children, for instance, and unfortunately, due to the heightened risk that's been initially reported, I have to attend rather than social services. For the initial stages, and if I attend your home, for instance, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's not as bad as it was reported, but clearly you need some support, I'm able to put those reports in for that individual, for instance. Well, I have to anyways, but also I'm able to, if with their consent, with their permission, I'm able to connect them to local charities, local organisations, and there's some terrific organisations, especially within the East Leicester area, that are there for people that are actually struggling, whether it's on the breadline, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's just to help claim benefits, for example, because they don't understand the system as to how they need to claim benefits, for instance, and they just need that little nudge, that little support and guidance. And we provide that. And one of the things that I always say to people is, that policing, you can always see the negative. People see the negative, but there's so much positive. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, nearly 10 years, and there's so much positive within it. And the positives is what stays with me. There's some negatives, but the negatives are just quite minute.
Yeah, compared to the positive.
Yeah, the positives outweigh more than the negatives, and people will always see the negative, and it's easy to see the negative, especially with the social media era, with mobile phones, like you highlight.
So we just got a question, actually. So someone's asked us, what's the hardest situation you've ever faced as a police officer, and have you ever faced any racism?
Okay, so in terms of the racism bit, that's the easiest one for me to start off with. Yes, so racism exists within society. It doesn't matter. You will experience racism. And one of the things I always tell people is especially when our students or when people are joining the organisation and they're of an ethnic background, you will get racial abused, you will get religiously abused. That's for a fact. And that's when, you've got your support networks, and your support networks are key. So for instance, for me, more specifically, you got the PPA, the Black Police Association, which I'm a member of, and we've got the Association of Muslim Police, which I'm currently the chair of, and you got the support networks that are there to help and support you. We do challenge the organisation as well to make sure there's adequate support put in place for ethnic minorities who do go through that, and we've got scrutiny panels internally as well, where we scrutinise stuff as well, with the senior management team. And I just want to highlight, when I say racism, because there's two sides to it. So you've got the racism I'm talking about right now is from the public.
Yeah.
So from the general public, you are, for instance, Friday, Saturday night, for example, is a classic one for me. You're going to get racially abused because people are intoxicated, there's alcohol or drugs involved, and when you arrest them, for instance, or sometimes I'm just in the presence of it, or I'm driving the van, I'm bringing the van down, and all of a sudden I'm the focus of the target with their racial slurs, etc. And it happens quite often, if I'm being honest with you, from that aspect of it. Because if you think about society at the minute, politically as well, it's become a lot more, for me personally, the way I see, without getting too deep into politics, is we have become a bit more intolerant.
Okay.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Society has. And people talk about ethnic minorities, immigration, etc., more openly as well.
Yeah.
Which then naturally leads into where people accidentally or deliberately, I don't know, but then go a bit too deep into it where they cross that line, where they shouldn't cross that line. But I've got a zero tolerance policy, so do my other colleagues. If you racially abuse me or you racially abuse one of my colleagues, etc., you're getting arrested. As simple as that. We do have a zero tolerance approach. A hate crime is a hate crime.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it's one of those things that if I witness it, or if any of my other colleagues, I expect them as well, if they witness it, and the organisation expects it of them as well, if they witness a hate crime taking place, we have a zero tolerance approach where we take a proactive, positive step in dealing with that incident there and then. And you are likely going to get a conviction for it, for that individual. So that's racism in essence. In terms of within the organisation, I've not experienced any direct racism.
Okay.
So I can't really comment on that at all. Most of my career I've worked within the East Leicester area. East Leicester has the most, in terms of ethnic minority officers, it has the most ethnic minority officers within the whole force, if that makes sense. So I've worked with colleagues who are Pakistani, like heritage-wise, Pakistani, Indians, Tanzanians, Kenyatis, Nigerians. So we
quite
are
a mixed bag.
Yes, we are a very mixed bag on East Leicester. So to be fair, I can't really comment about the whole organisation, but from what I can only talk about what I've experienced.
Yeah, definitely.
And I haven't experienced any direct racism from within the organisation. Outside general public, I have, yes.
Yeah.
And in terms of the hardest situation I've ever faced as a police officer, I'm the type of guy who kind of thrives off, difficult challenges. I think the hardest probably be is dealing with a sudden death. So by sudden death, what I mean is that if there's a suspicious death or an unexpected death, we tend to go to it to make sure that there's no element of foul play and there was no harm, etc. And we go on behalf of the coroners, for instance.
Okay.
And we do a report to the coroners, etc. But ultimately, I think the hardest element of it is not seeing the deceased, because I am quite okay with that element of it now. Initially, naturally, you're not when you see your first body, etc.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But after time, you do become quite accustomed, without sounding quite.
No, I guess it's part of your day to day.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully not every single day, but it's an aspect of your job that you see more regularly than obviously you'd want to. But
no, of course,
it's still something you see.
Yeah, I think the hardest bit for me is it's going to the families, especially when they don't expect it. And the time I've done, and this is what we call a sudden death message. And I've done this twice in my entire career. Because a lot of the time when it comes to sudden death, it's either a family member who tends to find the deceased anyways. But the last two I did was two individuals who basically took their own lives.
Right.
And we ended up finding them. And you go around to the family home to let them know. And it's just that, breaking the news, destroying their world, essentially. I've just walked in as a complete stranger into your home, and I've just given you this horrible news. And essentially, yes, I'm going to do everything I can for you to comfort you, etc. Until a family member or a friend arrives, I'm not going to leave you alone.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm going to have to leave you alone. And I've just walked out of that house, and I've just basically destroyed your world by giving you that news.
Wow, that gave me shivers.
Yeah. So that is those were the two most difficult for me personally. And you think about it, especially you do think about it. And I remember driving back to the station and I was thinking about it non-stop. And I was like, I've just gone into their house and I've just given them the most horrible news. And the sheer scream that came out of that mum was just alone, like, it just sticks with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've just destroyed this family's world. Now, naturally, someone had to.
Yeah, someone
has to do it.
Yeah.
Someone has to. But those are probably the two hardest situations that I've ever had to deal with, for me personally.
Yeah, no, those sound intense. I can only imagine. So, in regards to the employability side of things, we had a quick conversation earlier this week in regards to what is the process to actually become a police officer, if you wanted to, or is there anything for younger people in particular to sort of come up the ranks? Because, like you said, a lot of people think if you're not an academic individual, which you've said that you prefer not reading books and sitting exams, you're quite a hands-on individual. Now, for a lot of people, hands-on will mean stuff like carpentry, mechanics, those sorts of industries. But obviously, the police is one that I feel like a lot of people overlook.
Yeah.
So what sort of processes are there in order to become employable with the police?
So with the police, we don't do CVs.
Okay.
I've never had a CV, so we don't do CVs. One of the things is what we do is based on it's an application form you fill out.
Okay.
Where you have to give certain scenarios, examples of how you dealt with certain situations, and the question will specifically ask it: can you tell us a difficult time when you dealt with this? Difficult situations, for instance, and then you'll have to give a scenario or an example, but it's based on what we call the competency value framework. Okay. So it's a CVF, competency value framework, but you also find that on the College of Policing website, which is basically tells you what the police are looking for. So, for example, courage, what we're looking for in terms of courage, etc.
So it actually gives you a nice breakdown of exactly what. So a lot of companies will use their sort of their generic, how do I put it, their values will be put on there, but it's very generic, like they'll say stuff like you say, courage and enthusiasm and awareness, but it's like what does it mean? What does it mean to your company? Because I know what the word means, but obviously you don't understand what it means in terms of that specific profession, so the police actually break that down for you.
They do, yeah. So the answers are there, you just need to find it, read it, understand it, what they're asking for from you, based on the CVF, the College Value Framework, a competency value framework, from the College of Policing. Break it down, read it, and then you got to tailor your answers, your situation, to the CVF.
Yeah.
And then there's your answer, essentially, and you score your points, for instance. So you've got the application form that you got to fill out, and once you fill the application form out, then you go through what we call initial stage interview, which can either be over Teams or Skype, or sometimes face-to-face, depending on capacity, etc. And once you've passed that, essentially, it's where we come to is the vetting bit. And when I say vetting, it's basically based on, so there's different layers of vetting. So for a police officer or a PCSO, police community support officer, or a staff member, we do the basic vetting, essentially. You provide your details, your other half, if you're married, their details, and if you've got any children, their details, siblings.
So you'd have to worry about cousins, uncles, aunts.
No. So for that bit, you don't have to.
Okay.
Because you're just getting a basic vetting.
Vetting.
So a lot of people in our communities, and in my community, I'm sure in your community, we count second, third, fourth cousins as family.
Yeah.
In the definition, essentially. But when the application form is asking for, it's asking for your immediate family, essentially.
Right, the people you live with and the people around you, like your mother, father,
Mum,
brother,
dad,
sister.
Brother and sister, people you interact with on a day-to-day basis, essentially. That's all he asks for. So you don't need to put everybody down. And also in vetting, one of the things he asks, then he asks you a list of questions in terms of, have you ever had bankruptcy? Have you ever gone financial default on your payments? Because the reason it talks about finances is to see if you're easy to corrupt or potential to be easily corrupted, because that's one of the things that it looks at, because you'll be having access to certain information in certain systems.
Yeah.
It also looks into if you got any driving convictions or any convictions yourself as an individual, and you've got to be open and honest about all of these sort of situations. Or you've got to be open and honest. So at any point, if they find out that you've lied in your application form, rightly so, your application form gets binned off.
Okay.
Because ultimately, you're not an honest
You're not
person.
honest, yeah.
And you're not a trustworthy person. And we can't have you because you've already failed in the first basic.
Which is completely understandable, I guess, because, transparency is something I feel is very important with the police. You've got to be transparent.
100%. So I always tell people, if you're not sure about something that they ask you on the form, just err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So one of the things it asks you is, do you associate with any individuals who've got, like, for keeping it simple, who have criminal convictions or involved criminal activity?
Mm-hmm.
If you honestly, the answer is no, just say no. But if you've got suspicion that someone that you do chill with might be involved in something that could be considered criminally, and you're unsure if they've got a criminal record, just put it down.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? The worst case scenario, what's going to happen is you're going to have a conversation and discussion about managing that relationship, essentially.
Definitely.
It's not the be-all and end-all.
So you'd rather be honest than lie about
100%.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I feel like as part of being in the police, am I correct? And this is, I don't know if it's correct or not, but am I right in saying that they will check your socials?
Yeah, they'll check your social media. They'll check they'll check everything online.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that's online available, they'll check on you. They'll also check your financial history as well online, like, the credit checks and all that.
Yeah.
They'll do all of that, and they'll do background checks through their own systems, through our own system and national systems as well. So they'll do a thorough background
check.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, as nothing compared to obviously what the vetting process that you guys go through, but as a teacher, as a lecturer in FE in further education, we also have to get our DBS checks done, and I feel like obviously it's a lot more enhanced than that. But in hindsight, you've got to make sure you've got the right people to be doing the job that they're doing in the day to day. I feel.
100%, because if you think about it, I have the power to take your liberty away.
Mm-hmm.
I have the power to to take your children away.
Yeah.
If I feel that you pose a significant risk there and then, I've got the power to detain you to the Mental Health Act. I've got all these powers that I can, I've got access to all these systems.
Yeah.
At your lowest point in your life, you call the police. You tell the police everything.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't matter what your status is within the community, you trust the police and you expect the police to hold that confidentiality for you. If whatever you tell them, that stays between you guys, of course. So you've got all these powers. So naturally, if the police are going to hire someone, employ someone, and then we need to make sure that you're able to pass the first basic stage. If you can't even pass the first basic stages, is it right that you become a warranted officer?
No, that's completely understandable. What else is this? Obviously, you've got the vetting, and then what else is there in terms of applying to become either a police officer or to work for the police?
Yeah, so in terms of, there's several stages you can come in as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in through the old traditional way kind of thing, if you can say that really, where you apply, you go through all those stages,
mm-hmm.
you go to the College of Policing for a day of assessments where you have your psychometric assessment, they test your literacy and your mathematics,
mm-hmm.
and they do a exercise, role plays exercises to see how you handle certain situations, scenarios, etc. And then you do fitness test, which is a bleep test, which is up to 5.4 on a bleep test. And then when I joined, you had to also be able to push and pull a certain amount of weights.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they got rid of that now.
Right.
I'm not too sure about that bit, but I know you do the bleep test definitely still. And once you've passed all of that, you do your vetting, etc. They do your natural HR checks as well,
mm-hmm.
like your reference checks and that, which is quite common with any job you apply for nowadays. You basically start your training school, basically. We now call it the academy, where you spend about 3 months learning your legislation powers, the most common ones that you're expected to use.
Yeah.
You know, learning about the Theft Act. What does the Theft Act mean? Public Order, the Public Order Act. All
my law days are coming back to me now.
So you have a little crash course about around the legal side of the legal world. And you get your, what we call your officer safety training and your first aid training. But now it's changed. You've got your degree element of it.
Okay.
So you still apply like everybody else, but plus you have to also successfully get into DMU, for instance.
Okay.
So you've got to apply for the police and DMU, I believe, and you've got to successfully get into the DMU course. So that's an alternative way you can get in. We pay for the course.
Okay.
You don't pay a penny. So you get a free degree at the end of it after the 3 years.
What does the degree have to? Is it criminology or?
I think it's a specific course in
Oh, is
policing,
it specific? Oh, brilliant.
which is designed with DMU essentially, with the police nationally, I believe, it's been designed. So our local partnerships with DMU who deliver it, and everything's paid for you. You don't pay a penny towards the degree, so you don't come out with a loan, and you spend, in theory, it's meant to be some time, so you get protected time to go to DMU, to go and study, and then you're also expected to still work as a frontline police officer on response.
Okay.
So you're getting that practical, and you're getting that
theoretical aspect of it as well.
from
No,
the
definitely.
uni side of stuff. It's an interesting debate to be had about whether or not degrees are a correct way to get in, because a lot of places are now slowly moving away from it, or are offering it as an alternative as well.
Yeah.
So here we offer, if you want to go for the degree is available to you if you want to go for it. If you just want to come in through the normal route, apply from the normal route. And we've also got a graduate route as well.
Okay.
So if you graduated already and you've got your own degree in whatever it is, it could be anything, you can apply for and join the police essentially.
Now, see, a common misconception that we have, especially with our younger listeners, is when there's jobs that are more hands-on jobs, which, like you said, the police is definitely one of them, but even it being manufacturing, whether it's, becoming a fireman as well, all these different jobs that you have, a lot of people feel like it's just you getting the job and that's it. But there is an element of education to it, though, as well, isn't there? Because, as a teacher in further education, the people who do these courses, they'll be like, yeah, but I'm a jointer and I know how to do this specific thing, but they don't want to learn the theory side of it. But how important do you think the theory side of it is for our learners and our listeners? Because the theory is important, just as important as the real life, which you get both experiences with the police. But the theoretical, if you don't know what you're supposed to how you're supposed to handle a situation, you're not going to be able to handle that situation in a correct manner.
No.
You're going to go according to what you feel is right and gut instinct, and that's not always.
No, so you have to learn. The theory side of stuff is quite an important element to it. You don't have to sit there and read a textbook necessarily, but you've got to be open to learning.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when you come out of you spend pretty much 2 years as a probationer before you're confirmed in the office of constable. So the office of constable are confirmed in rank. So because we're not employees, we don't have legal rights, etc.
Yeah.
Employment rights. So we're governed by law and regulations. So you behold the office of constable. So what happens is you spend 2 years as a probationer, and in those 2 years as a probationer, that is when you learn.
Okay.
And a lot of your learning is based on, so for instance, you do 3 months in the academy, 3 months one-to-one tutorial. So for instance, you come out on air with me. That is when you're learning as well. So this is me teaching you. So like I said to you, I'm not a theoretical kind of guy. I'm not a textbook guy. So I'm not going to make you sit there and read textbooks all day. Do you know what I mean? But as a tutor, I've taken on that responsibility. So I need to know my stuff. So I have to. So what I tend to do is I tend to listen to online lectures, for instance. Or audio tutorials, for instance. I don't, because I know sitting there reading a book ain't me. So that's how I do it. But when you're with me, I am your book essentially.
Yeah,
I am your guidance. Yeah. I'll be verbalizing everything. We'll be breaking down. We go to a job, for instance, a theft jobs from Tesco's, for instance. Yeah, there are other supermarkets available, but we go to Tesco's, and then we deal with the individual who basically nicked a Kit Kat, okay? And then I expect you to deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And then, what's the worst case? What can you do? What's the worst thing you can do?
Arrest them, probably.
Worst case scenario, you can arrest him.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. You arrested him. Okay, no problem. We'll break it down. Why did he take that approach? Why did he take that action?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think there was another way you could have dealt with it? legally, have you thought about this, and then this is how you learn. You know what I mean? And because ultimately you can de-arrest them. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Because we're not taking them into custody. That means their name's not gone into, you know,
the systems.
We're not taking the photo. We're not taking the DNA. We're not taking the fingerprints, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a big deal. It makes no difference. The individual's name is going to go into the computer anyways to say that they've nicked the Kit Kat, but not to the point where we've taken their samples, for instance, and it's on the national day. So it's not a big issue. You can always just rectify it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's ways to learn, and also within policing as well. Theory is always important,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always people there who are very well experienced, but who can pass knowledge down to you as well.
I'm going to ask one of the questions. Experience over theory?
Experience over theory.
Okay.
You can have another copper here sitting there with you, and they'll probably go a different way as well. There's no right or wrong. Yeah, these are just personal opinions. Okay, there's no right or wrong to these sort of situations. So, theory. I'm all for theory.
Yeah.
I'm all for hearing it, but if you ain't got the experience to back it up, this is just my view. To back it up with what you're saying, I struggle to understand where you're coming from, because I'm looking at it from a practical point of view.
Yeah.
So, for instance, policing, there are people in our society who lead chaotic lifestyles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Theory sometimes doesn't work from a practical sense.
That does make sense, because every person that you deal with, as much as you want to try, you can try to put that into theory. A lot of the people that you deal with, every person is different.
It's different.
Every person will react to a certain thing in a certain way. You might have had one approach with 10 people and you've had the same sort of response, but then one person just gets triggered with that response, and it happens in everyday life, not just as policing, but I guess it's a lot more intensified during the harsher times in your life when the police do have to come out, and people get a bit more on the back burner, and they're like, that's when I feel like they get more aggravated.
Because I always say to people, when they join as well, I say to them, you know what right and wrong is.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what's right and wrong because we're taught what's right and wrong.
Moral compass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we all know what's right and wrong in society. As long as your moral compass is there,
Mm-hmm.
you're all right.
Yeah.
You can do the job as far as I'm concerned. Everything else we can teach you. We can develop you.
Yeah.
We can, tweak here, tweak there, add a little bit of spice there. We can sort it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as long as your moral compass is correct and is in tune, we're good. And ultimately, it's like you said, theory has its place. It has its place within policing. I 100% agree with that. But I think if you break it down to its core, you don't want someone coming there reading off a textbook, giving a textbook answer, giving a corporate line. What you want is a human person, a human being who's able to understand or empathize with you.
Definitely.
In your situation, in your scenario, and who's not going to judge you in a negative way.
Yeah.
And who's going to help you and support you and tailor a solution to your situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And if you give people that and it's basic human skills, it's just being a human being, isn't it?
No, definitely.
That's all we need. If you're able to be a human being, you're already halfway there.
No, that's brilliant. That's amazing. So, just in regards to the employability side of things, so how would you, like you mentioned, you're the director of Associations of Muslim Police.
Yeah, the chair.
The chair. How do you help people to get through the application sort of process? Is there any support that you guys offer them?
Yes. So, I think it's quite important. We do. There are many roles within police. I just want to highlight because I feel like we've focused a lot on police officers.
Police officers, yeah.
We do have police staff roles. So we need mechanics. We need accountants.
Okay.
We need call handlers.
Evidential summarizers.
Yeah, exactly. Any job that you can think of that any business would need, we need that. Plus some other bits and bobs.
Yeah.
So you don't have to join as a police officer. You can join as employee with employment rights, by the way, and you can be part of the police family essentially.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite an important element that I just wanted to highlight as well. But yeah, from an Association of Muslim Police perspective, what we tend to do is when we find out that there's an applicant who is from a Muslim background, and there's you can either contact us directly.
Yeah.
if you want to do so, if you want to apply, what we can do is we've got a number of people within the executive team who are experienced individuals within the organisation, and they can help support and guide you through the process of applying. Essentially, they won't give you the answers naturally, of course, but they'll just provide those answers, because sometimes you'll be like, well, what does this mean? I don't understand that. For instance, we talked about the vetting.
Yeah.
What does that exactly entail? What does vetting mean? We will be able to say, you'll be able to contact the person who you get appointed to from the executive team within AMP, and then you can have a chat with them, and they'll sit down and explain to you. And if you've got any concerns, or if you're worried about certain aspects, they can answer for you. If they don't have the answers for you, they'll go and find the answers for you out. And we're just, like I said to you, we need more representation from the Muslim community. At the moment, there's about 120 Muslims that are within the organisation approximately.
So I know in the last 2 weeks you guys have done 2 iftar parties as well, have you? Am I correct to say that?
Yes, yes.
I've not sort of got this information from anyone. My wife actually is part of AMP. So she works alongside yourselves as well. So she's the one who's mentioned that you guys have had these couple of iftars and stuff. And how have they been? How are they? I mean, it's the month of Ramadan.
Yeah. So again, it's about, we had a number of our colleagues. So the last iftar we just done, we had a number of colleagues who were fasting. Just to experience it. See, we do it every year. It's a yearly thing that we do it. One of our executive team members took on the role this year, and it was fantastically well organised by her. And we had colleagues come, break their fast with us who are fasting, who aren't Muslims. They don't have to. They're not obligated to do so whatsoever. Yeah. They were more than welcome just to come and eat, but they actually chose to fast for the day as well.
Brilliant.
And then they've broke the fast with us, watched us pray. Afterwards, we had a meal essentially, and then we broke up, and they were able to ask questions about Islam, for instance, and we were able to explain what Islam's all about. And we also had, in terms of the food wise, everybody brought a dish basically.
That's perfect.
Yeah, everybody brought a dish.
Did you get a lot of the question? Not even water.
yeah, not even water. Yeah, we had that as well. But also in terms of AMP internally, we are doing some work with colleagues as well. So for instance, we have a colleague at the minute who became Muslim, never been to a mosque, was too scared to go to a mosque, didn't know how to approach anybody, etc.
Wow.
Given where he lives, so we took him. Me and another colleague, we took him to the mosque for Friday during my prayers. That was his first time.
That's amazing.
So again, we're here for anybody who's interested.
It's a scary thought that in this day and age that still happens, because I know two of my friends who are now reverted. Sort of, they used to be praying in their bathrooms. That's what they used to tell me. And it's like we have this blessing where we can pray where we want, when we want, as we want. Their challenge is different. It's different. Definitely.
Because for him it was more of social anxiety and everything that was in it within it as well. And he didn't know how people react, etc. And it was just having those conversations with him, and connecting him to someone where he lives who is able to support him. Because I'm not able to support him because we work in different departments, and he lives in a completely different area to where I live.
Yeah.
So he's making sure he's got that connection, he's got that support network, but also within the job as well, telling him what his entitlements are.
Yeah.
If you want to go and pray, we've got a prayer room, make sure you go and pray. Just speak to your line manager, tell your line manager that these are the times that you need to basically go and pray, etc. Make sure you've got that agreement in place. A lot of the time, I've never known it to be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue. If it does become an issue, let me know, and I'll come down and I'll have that conversation with the line manager, etc. And I'll have that because sometimes people tend to find it quite difficult
to have a conversation with someone of authority.
Yeah. So I'm like, you let me know, and I'll come down and have that professional conversation and sort it out for you. Essentially, it's never been an issue at all. We've got prayer rooms in every station at the minute, or in most stations. Actually, not in every station, most station. We've got prayer rooms. So yeah. We are going in the right direction. But if anyone's interested in joining AMP, joining Leicestershire Police, do get in contact with AMP. Just email us at leics.police.uk. We are more than welcome to sit down and have that conversation with you.
That's perfect. Thank you very, very much for your time today, Adam. Obviously, we're in the last 10 days of Ramadan now, so it's all about bettering ourselves. So inside this month of Ramadan, we've had the chance to focus a lot on ourselves, a lot on our deen, but we also live in a world and our religion is also allowing us to work as well. So we need to make sure that we're going to the right places as well. But thank you very much for your time, and inshallah, I will see you soon.
No, inshallah, definitely.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah for having me.
Thank you for being here.